On a cold night in Prague, March 1939, a man hurried toward a train carrying a single suitcase. Inside it, the future of a writer who wanted to vanish, Max Brod was leaving a city under occupation, and in that worn case were Franz Kafka's papers, drafts, diaries, and the unfinished manuscript of a novel called The Trial. Words that should have been ash, words that would become a mirror for the modern soul, a mirror we still can't look away from. Kafka had asked for fire. He told Brod to burn everything, to let silence finish what illness had begun. But Brod refused. He had already promised his friend that he would not obey, and he kept that promise with a stubborn tenderness that bent history, publishing The Trial, The Castle, America, so that the quiet clerk from Prague could haunt the century, and the next one too. Decades later, the suitcase's afterlife became its own labyrinth. Courts argued, archives waited, librarians held their breath until a judge finally pronounced a verdict. These papers belong to the public, to readers, to anyone who has ever felt small in front of a door with no handle. It is the neatest irony, an institution protecting the legacy of a man who never trusted institutions. And yet, perhaps, that is exactly how preservation should work: complicated, compromised, and human. Who was the man inside the suitcase? Franz Kafka, born in 1883 in Prague, then the Austria-Hungarian Empire, a German-speaking Jew in a Czech city with a law degree, a day job at the Workers' Accident Insurance Institute, and nights given to sentences that felt like dreams with their eyes open. He lived between languages, between loyalties, between the intimate demands of family and the impersonal demands of the state, and that between, that pressure point, is where his art glows hottest. It matters that he worked in an office. It matters that he wrote reports about crushed hands, mangled machines, compensation schedules, rules written to keep bodies safe and costs down. It matters because The Trial is not an abstraction. It is written in the grammar of forms and files, stamped with the ink of real power. It is the art of someone who knew how authority sounds when it is very polite, very rational, and very cold. Prague in Kafka's time was a knot of identity: German, Czech, Jewish, imperial, national, threads pulled tight by politics and fear. The empire frayed, the street rumors grew sharp, the language of authority hardened like plaster, necessary, smooth, suffocating. And into that atmosphere, a word drifted down from sociology and settled on daily life: bureaucracy, rule by office, a system that promised fairness through procedure and delivered, sometimes, a better world, while quietly building an iron cage of rationality around the soul. Open The Trial and you hear the cage breathe. On the morning of his 30th birthday, Joseph K. is arrested, not dragged to a cell, not thrown in chains, simply notified respectfully that he is under arrest. He may go to work, he may sleep in his own bed, he must simply attend to his case, attend to it diligently, appear when summoned, speak when asked, climb stairwells in tenement buildings to courtrooms tucked among laundry lines, wait in airless rooms while officials apologize for the inconvenience. He has never told the charge, never shown the law, and yet he feels guilty, not for a deed, but for a condition, for existing under a gaze that always finds a smudge. Have you felt that? The sense you must have missed a step, forgotten a checkbox, disappointed a process, guilt without a crime, shame without a sentence. The feeling is the point. The system works by installing the court inside you. The world of The Trial is not a dungeon. It is a network of ordinary rooms, a painter's studio that doubles as a bureaucratic shortcut, a church attic buzzing with clerks, a lawyer's apartment that smells of stale papers and fatalism. The officials are courteous, the language is precise, the law is always almost within reach, and this almost is the weight on K's chest. The law stays visible enough to command obedience, invisible enough to escape responsibility. K cooperates, of course he does. He is a reasonable man in a reasonable order. He meets the magistrates, he hires a lawyer, he seeks influence, he consults Eerily, the painter who can secure three kinds of outcome: permanent acquittal, which nobody has ever seen, apparent acquittal, which sets you free until the case reopens, an indefinite postponement, an endless delay that becomes the air you breathe, rational options in an irrational game, traps disguised as strategy. At the end, two men in black coats escort K to a quarry at dusk. They are brisk, almost apologetic. The knife finds its place, and K whispers, like a dog, as if the shame would outlive him, a line so short it feels like a fall, the final judgment spoken by the condemned, willingly, obediently. That is the true triumph of the court. Not the blade, but the sentence the victim gives himself. What philosophy is being smuggled through these rooms? Not a treatise, not a neat box of axioms, but a field report from a world where power no longer declares itself with trumpets, a world where rules rule, where being a good citizen means performing comprehension, affirming consent you did not really give, where the individual learns to collaborate in their own condemnation, because the alternative, to refuse the script, feels like stepping off the edge of the map. This vision is not mysticism. It is a product of its time and a prophecy. Kafka lived in an era that trusted procedures to hold a crumbling empire together, that measured human lives in ledgers and stamps, that taught minorities to be both invisible and inescapable. A world rehearsing for the administrative nightmares to come, he turned those pressures into art, and the art became a warning label for the future. We even use his name as an adjective, Kafkaesque, to describe a hallway that keeps multiplying doors, each door leading back to the hallway. A polite refusal wrapped in paperwork, a system that demands your cooperation to prove you deserve the cooperation you'll never receive. We say it with a laugh, because laughing is how we keep from locking the door from the inside. And yes, it is funny. The trial is full of bleak jokes, satirical heat, the erotic tangle around the court's offices, the clerks who are bored and lusty and exhausted and oddly helpful, the endless consultations that accomplish nothing and somehow feel urgent. Humor is the oxygen. Without it, the novel would be intolerable. With it, we learn to breathe in poisoned air and still notice the sky. Trace the legacy, you will see it flicker everywhere. In a call center menu that never routes to a human. In a visa window that sends you from counter 12 to 7 and back to 12 again. In a credit score that says no without saying why. In a content moderation notice that cites a policy you cannot read. In an algorithm that quietly downgrades your livelihood with a shrug of code, polite systems enforcing invisible laws while we apologize for not understanding them. Here is the deeper twist. Weber warned about the iron cage, but Kafka shows how the cage reproduces itself inside us, how we learn the tone, the posture, the internal clerk who scolds us for not being more compliant, how we pre-fill the forms of apology, how we pre-punish ourselves to earn a mercy that never arrives. The court does not need bars, it needs our cooperation and our shame. What do we do with this? First, recognize the tone. When a process pressures you without naming the rule, pause, breathe, ask for the policy in writing, ask for the person who can change it, ask for the escalation path. Sunlight is not a cure-all, but it is the first breath after a long stairwell, and sometimes the mere act of asking returns a sliver of agency. Second, narrate the maze. Shame thrives in isolation. Bureaucracy feeds on silence, so share the letter that made no sense. Document the steps, the doors that closed, the civic breadcrumb trail. Become, for someone else, the guide Kafka never had. The smallest map can save a day, and a day saved can save a life's direction. Third, guard the inner court. Notice when you are pleading with a screen, apologizing to a process, rehearsing guilt without a charge. Step back. Remember, law is a human tool. Policy is a choice wearing a uniform. No tool deserves your soul. No choice is beyond question. No uniform absolves responsibility. Kafka also gives us a posture, attention, humor as armor, doubt as duty, compassion for the trapped, suspicion for the trap. His century burned, ours hums. His terror wore uniforms, ours wears interfaces. Both demand the same test. Do we let shame outlive us, or do we leave, instead, a record of questions that help someone else find the door? And the suitcase, that stubborn suitcase, reminds us that individuals can defy commands for the sake of the future. Broad disobeyed a friend's instruction to protect a friend's truth. Messy, yes. Morally uneasy, yes. And yet, without that disobedience, the modern world would lack its clearest parable of administrative dread. Sometimes loyalty means refusing an order to keep the promise beneath it. Have you ever felt summoned by something shapeless, nudged to apologize to a process, to beg a screen for mercy, to accept a no you don't understand? If you have walked with Joseph K. You have felt the soft hand of the court on your shoulder. You can still turn gently and ask the oldest civic question. By what law? Speak it aloud. It is a key, small but real. The lesson is not to burn the forms or flee the city. The lesson is to stay awake in the hallway, to insist on names for the rules, to lend words to the voiceless, to keep humor handy, to keep solidarity louder than secrecy, to refuse to say like a dog about yourself, ever, to answer the call of the system with the call of the citizen. If this exploration resonates with you, share your most Kafkaesque moment in the comments. What did the hallway look like? What finally moved the line, or didn't? Your story may be the map someone else needs. And if you'd like more journeys into the strange clarity of difficult ideas, subscribe. It helps this work reach the people who might need it next. And for now, as always, keep thinking.